Yo! What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. My name is Liam, and I pick fights here each and every week. Today on the show, we're talking bets and banter, and we're doing it for UFC Mexico. We're talking about Brandon Moreno, the former champion. Can he get back on track? In order to do so, he's got to take out the raw dog, Brandon Royval, the most recent challenger for the title. Shouldn't be easy. Should be fun. I'm excited for this. It should be a great night of scraps. We got a lot of great fights, a lot of local talent on the card, and none other than Rich himself back in the building to break it down with us. So without further ado, let's get him involved. Rich, how you feeling today, brother?
Feeling amazing. Last week was good. This card's good, so can't wait to break it down. I did say I'd address the Henry Cejudo thing to get that out of the way. I cashed out Henry with all the injury talk. It was the right thing to do. And obviously, I feel vindicated because the fucker lost. So, yeah, that was my stance on that one. I did pin it in the comments. I don't know whether people have seen that. But that injury talk was just too much, man. I had to back out of that bet. Volk was the new mush of the week. So the mush of the week's going strong. This week, it's Duncan, but we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah.
Hell yeah, man. So excited to hear your thoughts on the current mush of the week. And also, you know, I think that our analysis was borne out, right? We talked about why Henry Cejudo could win the fight. If anybody watched that first round and felt like Henry Cejudo had a 0% chance to win that fight, I think they stood corrected, right? You go back and watch. He rocks him just the exact same way that he got rocked by Marlon Moraes. I talked about that exact fight, that exact sequencing. So a lot of the things that we mentioned on tape were there. But to your point, Rich, what is the gambling space? First and foremost, it's an information business. And if you get good information that says, hey, this guy might not be up to snuff, then I have to take my own opinion into account. I looked at the video myself and I said to you, man, it looks to me like he's injured. And by the way, I think that was borne out over the course of the fight. There was a couple times Henry tried to like explode up from bottom and just had no explosion, right? And that could be the direct result of an injury. So in any case, Merab, hats off to him. It was an excellent performance, and he pushed, great down the stretch. But if you see something, say something, right? If you change your mind, if you're going to have a different opinion, it's better to just be transparent, open, public, and let people know, hey, this is the difference. And if you guys didn't see, I actually pinned that comment from Rich on the channel last week. So if we ever change our mind, if we have a different opinion, we'll put that out on Twitter. We'll put that out, in the various public platforms. So God bless. Hope that you guys were able to see that. And hope that you were able to benefit from the analysis, whether you were with us or against us. But without further ado, we got plenty of great action to break down. So without further ado, we'll start as we always do on Bets and Banter. That's with the first fight of the night. And we've got the Hillman, Mohamed Naimov. No more plus 225s, no more plus 250s on the Hillman, Mohamed Naimov, right? No more plus 400s like it was against Jamie Malarkey, up a weight class in that UFC debut. Now he's a massive betting favorite coming in here against Erik Silva, a guy that came in, had a debut, did not go his way against downtown DJ Brown, and we have not seen him since. Has he been putting in work in the gym? Yes, he has. Has he been looking like he's maybe on a cycle? Yes, he has. But is that going to make a difference against the Hillman, Mohamed Naimov? I'm not sure. Let's hear from the man himself. Rich, how do you feel about this first matchup of the night?
Yeah, so I hear people saying that Naimov doesn't deserve this price tag, and it is a bit wide. I agree, but I think he wins, so it's kind of whatever to me. I won't touch it, though. I see people parlaying him. I think that's a bit risky. I'd rather just put a quarter of a unit on one of his props. I actually like the submission for Naimov. I haven't heard anyone talk about that. I think
you rat bastard, Rich. You beat me to the punch.
Oh, is he going for it too?
Haven't bet it, but yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking at here as well.
Cool. Head and arm, choke, maybe round 2. That makes sense. I think Silva is a bum, to be honest. He's 36. Didn't fight last year. Probably the last fight in his contract. He's a purple belt at best. All rear naked chokes on his record. So he's not this wizard on the ground who's going to pull up arm bars or triangle him. So I think we're good there. So, yeah, I just think he gets tired. I've seen Naimov go for Kimuras and whatnot in fights. But, I just think Silva will gas. Come round 2, he'll give it up, man. And I like Naimov to get the sub, man. It's a nice line.
Yeah, from a money line standpoint, listen, I like Mohamed Naimov at plus 225 against a lot of these guys because he's going to go out there and fight really hard, right? He's going to lie, cheat, steal for your money, right? The guy will poke somebody in the eye. He'll kick him in the nuts. He'll do whatever it takes to get the win. And listen, you can like or dislike that as a stance for like my moral superiority. When we're talking about making money, if the guy's not like going to go out there and do anything to win, it's going to be harder for me to part ways with that cash. And I do think that that's what I liked about Naimov. Also, Nathaniel Wood is a small guy, right? Coming up from 135. We've seen him struggle with the size of some of these guys at 145 pounds. So he's got the skill. And I think that's why Naimov's grappling looked so poor against Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood will actually audit you skill for skill in some of those positions. We saw that with Charles Jourdain, right? He just absolutely ran him through the grappling paces there. But when you look at this kind of matchup, I say to myself, Naimov, I don't think is the much more technically sophisticated grappler, but he has been working on that. I think he did a camp with the UAE guys, Khabib and the crew, before his last fight in Abu Dhabi. And I also believe that Naimov is a guy that could probably push that pace a little bit harder than a much older opponent here in Erik Silva, 36 years of age. So I know Erik Silva's trying to do the right things in terms of preparation, but father time, undefeated, as they say. And Naimov, young, had some experience. He's already been through those ups and downs, right? People will forget he lost back to Colin Anglin on the Contender Series, and people wrote him off. He'll never go anywhere. Had a 5-round fight with Olivier Mourad, another Contender Series alum. Didn't quite go his way, but I think he's been getting better and better. I think he's been showing a better product, and I do think he's going to go out there and fight hard for your money. But those factors aren't enough for me to say, like, yeah, just go out there and parlay the minus 600. No problem. Like, it's just going to be easy bread, because it's an MMA fight, right? It's a certain amount of volatility that I don't want to get involved in. So if you got the early numbers, I must admit, I was tempted to parlay him when he was like minus 250 or minus 225 or whatever it was very early on in the cycle. But now I think the number has gotten away. I don't think there's any betting value on the money line. I think you either have to pick a prop or you have to move on and pass to the next fight. So I think this is a decent scrap here. I do think Erik Silva is going to present probably a better product than we saw in that first UFC fight against TJ Brown, but that still may not be enough, right? TJ Brown, I think, is a pretty low level guy for the featherweight division, all things considered.
Well,
next. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I think TJ Brown's much better than Naimov in the wrestling and whatnot. So, yeah, props to TJ Brown there. And Naimov winning this one, let's get it right. Naimov's no fucking D1 wrestler. This is purely a silver fade, the age and the rest of it, and the fact that he's just shit, to be honest. So, yeah, this is going to be probably an attrition finish. Just Silva kind of giving up come round 2. He's seen it in the TJ Brown fight. He gets deflated on the chair. And yeah, I just don't think he's made for this, man. So yeah, I like it. But yeah, the people are right. The line is off on Naimov. It is wide, but I found a prop, good value, taking it.
Here's the last thing I'll mention as we move off this fight. I've mentioned this before, but I think Tajikistan is a market that the UFC would like to expand upon because the fan base there is rabid for MMA. They fill up stadiums to watch these guys at like 1, 2, 3 in the morning to watch them on like UFC Apex cards. Like, I do believe that there's some value to that. Now, that's not going to save Muin Gafurov from being bad at MMA and losing every big fight he's ever had in his career. No disrespect. But when you look at these other guys, I think Nurullo Aliyev, and I do think that this guy as well, Muhammad Naimov, have some potential, and I think they're being match made accordingly, right? I thought that the Nathaniel Wood spot was like just enough, like, hey, Nathaniel's tough, he's got credibility, but we could just get him over the line here. And I think that the same, with this matchup, the reason the line is in his favor is because they tried to give him a favorable matchup. I think it really is that simple. And I think it's because Tajikistan likes to support their guys. So Hillman, Muhammad Naimov, going to stand up, I believe, in the first fight of the night. Next up, we've got Victor Altamirano taking on Felipe dos Santos. I think, what is his name? Detone. It's something about flaming lips or something. Lipe de Tona.
Right.
Yeah, interesting guy here. But I think at 23 years of age, big favorite coming in against the 33-year-old Victor Altamirano. Victor's a guy with some UFC experience. He went out there and his takedown defense was just so liable against Tim Elliott, right? And Tim will continue to attempt takedowns throughout the fight. And he's gotten a lot better at pacing himself over the course of his career, right? previous fights, he would have went out there, attempted 50 takedowns and gassed out in the first 2 rounds. But I do think he's done a better job of managing that pace over 15 minutes as he's gotten a little bit more experience, as he's gotten more comfortable in the cage. So I do wonder how this fight's going to play out. Big plus money on a Mexican fighter here in Victor Altamirano. I think that's going to tempt some people to the underdog. But I also think, going out there, having a short notice fight with Manuel Cap, keeping it somewhat competitive, not getting finished, I think those things are going to get a lot of people to say, hey, this kid's just of a higher caliber, 23 years of age, big age gap in his favor. I think a lot of people are going to lead to clicking the favorite here as well. And I don't know that I could get there. There's an expression my wrestling coach used to say, which was a good loss. So, it's like a good loss. Like, what's good about a loss? And he did go out there and lose his last fight. Still a young guy, needs to bounce back. And Victor is a tricky enough guy. He does have an awkward style of MMA. So it's not something I'd feel super bullish about at 75% indication. How do you feel, Rich?
Yeah, well, I think this is a dog or pass situation. And I've actually seen people parlaying Naimov with Dos Santos to try and get plus 100, which I wouldn't advise. But in this position, I was a bit square myself, man. On my podcast I did earlier in the week, I do it very early. I like Dos Santos. But I think I was giving too much credence to that Manuel fight, man, and the fact that he went 3 rounds on short notice. But styles make fights, man, and every fight's different. So, yeah, I like Altamirano here. I think it's likely an Altamirano decision. And the reason is that takedown defense is disgusting from Santos. He's shown it on the regionals. He showed it in the cup fight. He's a bit one-dimensional on the feet. He's got that Muay Thai style where he has to get his rhythm going. And Altamirano's unorthodox in everything he does, man. He's a wild guy. I think he's going to hit the body kicks, work the body, which is good. Obviously, it depletes the cardio. Altamirano's got good cardio, so that bodes for him. Santos, he won 50K in his debut. I don't like seeing that. Sometimes, these young fighters, they win 50K and they're fucking snorting everything Brazil's got to offer or whatever the fuck they're doing. I think it was Junior Albazi. Back in the day, he won 50K, and then all of a sudden he was just going to fucking Disneyland and buying everything he could to take back to Romania or wherever he was from, and then he just fell to shit, man. I think it goes to the head sometimes. So I don't like that from Santos. I'm a fan of Altamirano. Can't even say his name. Interviewed him once. He's a super nice guy. Very intelligent from his interview. I think he knows what needs to be done here. I think he's going to push the pace, go to the body, and the number's just too attractive not to take up, man, based on that. And if you go and watch Santos on the regional scene, he was going split decision to 4-0 bums. So, yeah, I don't like him in this fight, man. I like Altamirano, and I'm going to take the shot, man.
Yeah, and just looking at the resume on paper, the thing that I believe all 3 opponents have in common, I don't know for sure about Jared Brooks, but he had a great record at the time, right? 14-2. I believe all those guys are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. I think that's true of Carlos Hernandez and Tim Elliott for sure. So these are guys that are a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more experienced guys, a lot of professional fights under their belt at the time that they beat Victor. So that is something I want to take into account here, is maybe the experience could play some dividends, but it's an interesting fight. The one thing that does concern me is getting such a big price on a Mexican fighter on this card, but it does seem like a lot of people, to your point, are liking the favorite here. And that's interesting, right? Most of the time people are like, hey, home fighter, going to click the home fighter here. And if this is a fight that goes to decision, he's 2-1 in decisions. Obviously, Manuel Cap, high-level fighter, but hasn't shown many times he can go out there and win decisions against high-level fighters. Who's his best win via decision? Hugo Paiva. So it's like, I don't know that I'm sold on him as a commodity. I think he's got more upside long-term. I think he projects higher in the division, but does that mean he's going to win this fight? Not necessarily. Go ahead, Richard. Yeah,
and if you watch that Paiva fight, man, that was just an example of everything I'm talking about. It was awful. He was on his back constantly. So, yeah, and another thing to mention, in that Tim Elliott fight, Tim Elliott, in my opinion, was on the voids in that fight, man. His physique looked better than it has been at his age. Altamirano, short notice. And this is why I leaned Santos when I first looked at this bout. recency bias, man. And I was guilty of it. And I think that's what's driving the line is a recency bias on both sides. Santos had a good performance against Cop, and Altamirano looked shit in his last fight. But, you know, you got to make allowances and look at the, you know, the reasons for why that was.
Absolutely. And I do think, just like broadly speaking, quality of competition for Victor is about there. You know, his wins maybe not you know, that much better, right? Like not a huge caliber above, but more consistent quality of competition, I would say. And I wouldn't rule out the Felipe sub. I mean, he's a more dynamic guy, fast, but I don't think it's super high percentage either. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But in any case, we can move along to the next fight here. This is the guy I was watching tape on right before we got started, which is Luis Rodriguez. And I had said, you know, before I had considered betting him blindly, you know, just based on the fact that I was never sold on Denise Bondar. You know, I didn't really like what I had seen from him prior to coming to the UFC. And I felt like people were just parlaying him on speculation because Malcolm Gordon sucks. Like, so I bet Malcolm Gordon got the worst of the line, which is something I pride myself on very rarely doing, right? Like I'm very good at timing the market, often on bets that lose, right? Like I don't always win my bets, but like I normally get the price at the best of the price. And Malcolm Gordon at plus 210, I was like, there's no way it's going higher than this. And then I think it went up to like plus 300, whatever. I was like, oh, I bet a dead letter here. Malcolm Gordon's not going to win. Then the injury happens early in the fight. I was like, man, maybe this guy's a little frail. You know, Malcolm Gordon's not the most durable guy, not the most ironclad guy. So if you're getting hurt early on in the fight, it could be a fluke, it could be a coincidence, or it could be, you know, maybe the durability's not there. Then he goes out there against Carlos Hernandez. I wouldn't say the most devastating finisher in the world, right? Not the most prolific knockout guy. And he was out there, you know, getting outstruck, and then he got beat up a little bit down the stretch, got brutally knocked out in that fight as well. Obviously, there was a clash of heads, maybe incidental head contact, but I mean, it's a fight at the end of the day. And we've seen plenty of fights where guys clash heads and they don't stop it at all, or like give them like, hey, you know, here's some recourse. We'll call it a technical decision. They just, you know, they're like, sorry, man, it's fighting. And I do think about this fight, Luis Rodriguez got jobbed the fuck out against Jerome Rivera on Contender Series. I thought that was insane. Like, I messaged you right away when I watched that. I was like, am I crazy for thinking that this guy got robbed? Because like, I thought it was an argument for a 30-27. Like, I don't think that that's like ironclad, but I didn't think there was one round where I was like, man, Jerome Rivera just, you know, took his lunch money. He took his back and then he turned in, got on top, controlled him. And this is a guy who I think a lot of his regional tape hasn't looked that great, in part because he's fighting up at 135. I think he's just trying to get more experience, get in there, get more cage time. And I think that when he's cutting to 125 for these UFC type of experiences, opportunities, I think it's because he's taking them more seriously. I think it's because he really wants to maximize his skill set. And I believe he's physically strong. You know, Jerome Rivera was huge. He hadn't lost. He was very confident at the time. And I think that Luis Rodriguez, 21 years of age, you know, didn't throw enough. He was in a lot of good positions, but didn't take advantage of them enough times. And that, I think, is what ultimately cost him that fight. You know, Jerome Rivera was finding a couple cheap little short elbows and things like that. And I think they scored that, and they didn't score the top control, the positions, the submission attempts, things like that. And I look at this fight and I just say, do I know that Luis Rodriguez is going to come out here and beat Bondar? No. So I don't feel great about the money line pricing, but I do think that what I've seen from Bondar is not a great amount of durability so far. And also, I think Luis Rodriguez kind of invites some risk, like goes out there and tries to be wild, throws some spinning shots, throws a lot of power into all of his punches, and then also is looking to take people to the ground, wear them out. I think this is a fight where we could potentially see a finish. I think that he puts himself in some sketchy grappling situations. That would be my concern here with the money line, is against a guy like Bondar, who had a lot of submissions coming into the UFC. We haven't seen that ground game translate yet necessarily, but you know, this is not a guy in Luis Rodriguez where I'm like, his ground game's 100% going to be better. It's like, I think it's better from what I've seen, but he also is putting himself halfway into a triangle, then passing the guard and doing a couple of things where if somebody's a little faster, if they're a little bit more dynamic, they could snatch something, maybe put him in danger. So I think fun fight. You know, the things I'll probably look at for pricing out and just seeing if there's value, the ends by sub, the Rodriguez by sub, and you know, the fight ends inside the distance, those kind of props. That's probably the way I'll be looking at this from a violence standpoint. How do you feel, Rich?
I made 2 bets, either by sub, Rodriguez by sub. So I have that. Yeah, I think when I first looked at the bout, I was considering Bondar and I was leaning towards him. You know, Rodriguez is green. He makes mistakes on the mat. He showed that in the Rivera fight. Could have had the back, could have had the choke, but he's young, made mistakes, was falling off. He definitely won that fight. Paul Felder's a bitch for not even saying anything at the end of it. He was like, oh, well, that's that. You know, he should have called out them judges. It was a disgusting decision, in my opinion. So, yeah, I do think he's green, Rodriguez, but Bondar's, I don't know what Bondar is, man. When I first looked at him, I thought, there's this like Russian type, Sambo type guy. He's good at submissions. He's going to beat Gordon. He's going to sub Gordon. And yeah, even in the short amount of time that fight went on, I didn't like what I saw from him, man. He was getting reversed on the mat. You know, he just wasn't having his way with someone like Gordon, like I would have expected. I bet Hernandez in the distance and got fucked on it. So yeah, going back to
That's
the well,
gross.
Man, tell me about it, bro. They go your way sometimes they don't. So yeah, I initially bet either by sub, it's plus 340. And then I thought, fuck it, man. Why aren't I touching the 800 sub for Rodriguez? Plus 800's wild. Someone just asked about Santos by sub. Nope. This is the one you want to hit by sub, a plus 800. So, yeah, what else can I say, man? That's where I'm at.
Yeah, we tend to see this one pretty similar, man. And I just think it's because you got 2 guys that can make mistakes in the grappling, but I trust the physicality. I trust the aggression. And I just like the upside a little bit more on Rodriguez. Young guy, already has more followers, right? Like, this is like a silly little thing, but it's something I always pay attention to. He has more followers coming in here as a guy who's never fought in the UFC than Denise Bondar has had 2 opportunities in the UFC. It's like, are you making the most of them? Is anybody learning who you are? Does anybody give a shit? And so far, the answer has been no. And I think if he loses this fight, he's getting cut. Like God's honest truth. So, you know, I don't think he's a needle mover. I don't think he matters at all to the company. I think Rodriguez has some upside. And I think also maybe the UFC is like, hey, here's a winnable fight for your first one because sorry, we jobbed you out to Jerome Rivera, who turned out not to be the goods, right? Like, my bad. But in any case, we can move along to the next fight here. And we'll have you kick this one off, Rich. We got Claudio Puelles, I believe the Prince of Peru, taking on Ziam, the Smile Killer de Paris, France. How do you feel about this one?
Why do I get this one first? It's shit, man. It's pretty simple to me. Puelles is a fake. I was surprised he was 27. I would have expected 33, 34. He's probably that in fight years. That performance against Dan Hooker was disgusting. He quit, basically. He was moaning about eye pokes. Didn't want to be there after a round, you know, when his Hail Mary subs didn't work. So, yeah, how can I not bet this Ziam bloke, man, by KO? And that's what I'm looking at. KO 2-3. Puelles is doing some commentary work for the UFC now. I've seen him on the desk for Spain or whatever the fuck, Espanol. And yeah, outside of his meme sub, man, I don't think he's good. He hasn't got good hands. He's shown me he's got quit in him, so I'll never be backing him. Ziam's on a 2-fight win streak, kind of turned a corner a little bit. Good performances. Even got on top on the ground, which he hasn't done previously. He's notoriously like a stand-up guy. Keeps the range, skirts around the outside of the cage, throwing the jab, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I like Ziam to kind of break him and then come round 2-3, get his KO. It could be Puelles just literally quitting, or Ziam could catch him or something. But I think the discrepancy in the stand-up is just too wide. Obviously, it's the same case for the ground game, but I think Ziam's smart. He's not going to fucking take it there. He's going to keep it on the feet where it starts. And yeah, like him by KO 2-3, man. He's got the metrics on his side also. He's a big fucker, 6'1", 7'5" reach. Yeah, take Ziam, man. What about you?
So this is going to be a source of disagreement for us, but not profound disagreement, right? I'm not here to argue Claudio Puelles is the second coming, right? I'm not here to argue even that he's a great fighter. But I think if Terrence McKinney is sexually assaulting you on the ground, then I do have some massive concerns about how Claudio Puelles is going to do in terms of his submission grappling, right? And like, I know that Terrence is strong, physical, he's a wrestler, but the positions, the scrambling in that fight, I thought was horrific. Like I thought that it looked very low level there. And granted, that was a few fights back, right? He has been showing some improvement, but Figlak, I think, was on short notice, right? Didn't have great preparation for that spot. And Claudio Puelles is like a quiet producer in the UFC. Like everybody says he sucks every time he's ever fought that I can remember. He's 5-2. You know, it wins over Clay Guida, Chris Grutzmacher, some tough guys that are like, you'd expect like they should be able to go out there and handle themselves. Like Clay Guida, normally if you're going to get him, you got to like choke him, right? Like he just has bad reactions to being put in chokes. You put him in a headlock, you put him in a choke. He's like, and just panics, starts tapping, right? Nothing wrong with that. He's a great fighter, but that's where you normally get him. To get him with the knee bar is like, man, this guy just, it's like proof of concept. Like he just goes out there and finds a way to pull these things off from bad positions, from good positions, rolling to him. Now, Dan Hooker has had a couple examples now where he's done that to a leg locker, just like stifled them, gone, basically been in like a full extension. My man's in the splits, right? He's like out there with a leg fully extended, and he can just tolerate that. He's very tall, and he can also make people pay, right? Like he can hit them with big shots from there. So I'm not saying that Claudio Puelles is like a great fighter, but I think that he has the grappling upside here. And so my lean would be the under 2.5, like the fight not to go the distance, right? I think Fares Ziam has more of a chance to win this fight by knockout than a lot of other fights, because I think Puelles, if he doesn't get his sub early, if he doesn't get to his positions, he can be flaky, he can be fraudulent, he can't quit. But he's plus 180 here. What was he against Dan Hooker? Probably a similar price. And Dan Hooker would fucking kill Fares Ziam, I feel. Maybe not now, like he's a little bit past his prime, but I just feel like overall base skill set, Dan Hooker's gone out there and out wrestled guys that are on the come up at 155. He's gone out there and went 5 hard rounds with Dustin Poirier. Like he's just of a higher ilk than somebody like fucking Fares Ziam, who's 2 fights ago getting submitted by Terrence McKinney. So for me, that was the one thing that gave me some pause here. But I do think, you know, if it's not the parlays, if it's not that, then I get it. Because like Fares Ziam, I think could be the parlay buster, but I also think he could go out there and knock this guy out. So I think the props have some upside. I think you could find value on this fight. I think the fight not to go the distance could be value as well. But I don't want to write off Claudio Puelles. I know that he doesn't look great in all phases, but he also has decision wins in the UFC, multiple. He went out there and out-wrestled Jordan Levitt for 15 minutes. That's what told me that Chase Hooper was going to submit that guy and make it look easy. So for me, those are the kind of things where, is he a perfect fighter? God, no. But I just think that he has more than one chance to win the fight. And I think that he's probably going to go out there and try and maximize that win condition with the first round submission attempt. So that's what I'd be looking at here.
Yeah.
Shout out to our guy, Dan from Half the Battle. Says, sup, gentlemen, wanted to stop by, say what's up, and everybody smash the like button. You know that that's the truth. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Rich, please.
Yeah, that Terrence McKinney fight, that was at the Apex as well, small cage. And I think Ziam knew going into that fight that this is like some, you know, athletic motherfucker who's strong in round 1, and he was just discouraged going into it. But when you're facing Puelles, who hasn't got the fucking wrestling to get it to the ground, well, I don't think he has against Ziam. I don't think he's got a shot in hell, man. I think that plays a part. And then you look at the people Puelles was subbing. Clay Guida loves to get sub, man. I know he hasn't recently. He's done all right, but
he loves to get choked, in fairness. He loves to get choked, but I haven't seen many guys like joint submit Clay Guida from memory.
Yeah, that's true. But still, the point stands. He likes to get subbed. He's a wrestler. He likes to take it to the ground like an idiot against someone who's got submissions. Chris Gritzmacher, say no more. You know what I mean? He knee-barred him, big whoop. And then before that, rolling around with Jordan Levitt, they were both fucking gassed in round 3. It was disgusting. So I don't put any credence to them wins for Puelles, man. And I'm highly confident Ziam gets the KO. But yeah, we can differ on that one, man.
There we have it. So a little bit of dissension here on the preliminary portion, but it's not a passionate disagreement for me. I think both these guys are pretty bad. I do think that Ziam has more potential long-term, but he's just not a guy that I feel confident trusting at the price. So there's the only difference. But in any case, we got Edgar Chairez taking on Daniel Lacerda. And we don't have to belabor this fight necessarily because they've ran this about 1 million times. I thought Chairez was going to win the first time. I thought he was going to finish the first time. I thought that, Daniel is a guy that's fun. He brings a great energy and pace. But last time out, he almost limited himself from doing that, right? He came out there and he was trying to wrestle and grapple, get to the top position, instead of going out there and trying to strike and be dynamic, which I think that might be a way to try and get to Edgar Chairez, But Chairez showed in the last fight, he was very composed when he got taken down. He was able to work from those positions. And I do like his guillotine series. I think he's gotten a little bit better in the grappling. And when I think about this fight, I say, everybody is going to be insta-clicking Chairez by sub. But we've seen Lacerda just crumble at times and just give up, striking-based losses. It's like somebody throwing hammer fists or whatever. And I think that the fact that he's pushed back this fight a bunch of times, the fact that they've had a bunch of dissension there, and the, half tap and the controversy with the ref, I would not be surprised if this guy just decided I'm going to try and get a good position and ground and pound him, just finish the fight that way. So for me, that's the way I try and be a little contrarian here is I think Chairez ITD is probably very likely, but I think Chairez by KO is not something I would rule out here. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
Yeah, I was just looking at the props, man. It's crazy that Chairez sub is 250 and the KO is 180. You'd think it'd be the other way around, considering how the first fight went.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, I don't want to touch it, man. How can you bet Lacerda when he's 0-4 in the UFC, lost 3 by ground and pound, and lost 1 by sub? So yeah, I won't be taking any action on this fight. But what I will say is though, Chairez, he just cut a lot of weight, man. So although he's a Mexican native or whatever, it might he might be the one getting depleted rather than Lacerda. Lacerda can definitely win this fight if he's smart, but he's not smart. He's not gonna wrestle fuck for 3 rounds like he should. Just stay safe on top, burn down the clock, fight for the decision, man. He could easily put Chairez on his back and just stall this one out and get the W, but he won't. He'll probably get caught with something. So don't want to know.
So our guy Line Mover is saying the fight is at 130, which that is not listed on Tapology. But let me pull up the ESPN Fight Center and see if that is the case. So we have a little bit more accurate information here as we move forward. But I will pull that up after we begin the conversation on the next fight. We'll kick it over to our guy Rich to talk about Jesus Aguilar taking on Mateus Mendonça, and I believe he's got a lot to say. So Rich, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so like I was saying at the beginning of the show, Mendonça is mush of the week. I've had a lot of people join me on Jesus Aguilar, which I don't like. To be honest, they're kind of mushing my, mush fade, if you will. But the reason I don't like Mendonça is, although he fought Basharat in his debut, and obviously Basharat's a motherfucker to deal with, he weren't winning that fight. He gassed him round 2 or 3, man. He showed me that. And that's the reason why when he fought Menes, I faded him. The number was just too big on Menes, who I don't think is shit at all. I think he's pretty decent when he's not fighting, the Russians. So yeah, and also Mendonça, in that fight with Menes, he just showed low IQ, man, going for that submission, didn't give it up when he was getting pounded out. He seemed intent on fucking, getting that leg lock. So that was low IQ. Don't like to see that. He's young, only 25, bad regionals like Santos, I was mentioned earlier, fighting bums, really. These are squash matches. They don't really mean shit. And on the other side, Aguilar, although he's at a deficit when it comes to the metrics like he is in every fight because he's tiny, I like his tenacity, man. He's bullish in there. He's got a nice blast double that he hits. And he's game to fight, man. And most importantly, he's got good cardio. And I think that's going to hold up in this fight. So I like Aguilar. I like the money line. I also like 2-3, like many of these fights I'm going to mention later on in the card. I like the 2-3 finish. Whether it be the sub or KO, I don't know. Could be a ground and pound, but got a nice guillotine. That's not profound to say. Just go look at his record on Tapology. Finished a lot by the guillotine. And yeah, just the pressure, the aggression from Aguilar, being in your face, being game. I think he's going to break Mendonça, and I'm pretty high on the fact we're going to see a finish in round 2 or 3. So yeah, I don't think these shoot box guys are going to do good on this card, man. That's 2 of them I've got taken an L so far. You with me?
This is an interesting spot. I'm leaning towards the Aguilar side here. I like his game. I like the fact that on his record, he's got a 5th round submission win over Edgar Chairez, who I know is a dog, right? He doesn't want to give up. He doesn't want to give up those submissions, right? He's been submitted before, but you have to catch him in transition. My guy, Tatsuro Taira, very talented fighter, was out there putting him through some of the paces on the ground, but we saw Chairez did not want to give up easily. He fought hard there. He was maybe the toughest opponent for Taira so far in the UFC. You look at Jesus Aguilar, he had a unfortunate fate against Taira, right? He's very small. Taira was able to get to his positions early in the fight when they were both dry. Triangle armbar. You could be a smart grappler and get out of a problem, right? But there's no solving a dilemma. And when you're in a face down triangle armbar, the question is, do I want to get choked unconscious or do I want my arm to snap? Not a great series of choices that you have there. So he had to tap in that situation. But I think that Tatsuro Taira would absolutely run the paces around Mendonça as well. So I don't think that that's like a relevant point of comparison. Now, I also don't think Shannon Ross is a relevant point of comparison. Why? Because I think he has the worst chin in the history of MMA. I said that on my show. I can't believe, like, one of the biggest regrets of my betting life is that I did not bet the plus 900 on Jesus Aguilar via KO against Shannon Ross, because it was truly the best opportunity you've ever had to fade the worst chin in MMA at a great price. Now, when you're talking about how I handicap this fight, how I expect this fight to go, I think this fight is probably going to end by submission more often than not. Why do I say that? Both these guys love to grapple. Both these guys are very willing grapplers. When you look at the last fight, I think people are going to be tempted by Jesus Aguilar, just this power puncher now. He's tiny, guys. He literally has T-Rex arms. That's why I did not bet the KO against Shannon Ross. I was like, man, it looks too good to be true. Like plus 900, and he's got these T-Rex arms. I was like, he's probably going to end up just submitting him like he always does, club and sub, something like this. And Aguilar does have some power, right? I do think that he does have power. If you look at his tape, he throws, but it's not going to be easy for him to connect on most of his opponents. He's very small. So against Mendonça's got a size advantage, but Mendonça likes to grapple. He likes to wrestle. He's going to go out there, in my opinion, and try and push it into those phases. And he's not bad in those phases, right? Like, I think people would be fooling themselves to say, like, oh, this guy's a zero grappler. Because if you look at Mendonça, he has purple belt credentials in Brazil, right? Very good grappling, but mostly in the gi, right? That was a lot of his wins. So I think that he's now been focused more on his training in no gi. But I also think we sometimes see with these grapplers, Mike Malott, another recent example. If you commit to the leg lock and get it, like Claudio Puelles, you're a legend. If you commit to the leg lock and don't get it, you gas out, you're stuck underneath. It's the reason I always say it's more important to have good position in fighting. You'd rather be on top in fighting, period. It's better to be on top. And when I'm thinking about this spot, Jesus Aguilar, I think, is more likely to try and pursue top position, right? Mateus Mendonça is willing to go to his guard. He's willing to go to his back. He's willing to play from some of those positions, and that could be beneficial, right? You could catch him in a leg entanglement. He could catch him dry. But if that does not happen, I think it becomes more likely he's going to tire out faster. Gravity's not on your side, right? And I also think that when you start to realize, hey, I'm getting tired, I need to wrestle up, I need to figure out another way here, I think he's going to sit up into guillotine attempts. I think he's going to sit up into sweeps to the mount, because that's a lot of Jesus Aguilar's game. So Aguilar takes some risks. I do think he's going to put himself in, some wild scrambles, but I trust that he has the cardio to push longer, deeper into some of those scrambles if he does not get finished early. So for me, Jesus Aguilar by sub is a little bit sneaky here, because I do think Mendonça probably a better grappler, but you start to grapple for too long and you get tired and you're cutting to 125 when you look like, a big guy. He looks bigger than some of his 135-pound teammates. I can't believe he's cutting to 125 here. So for me, everything is pointing towards the Jesus Aguilar side at the plus money. But, if I'm not getting plus money, I'm probably going to have to lay off it because I do think, it is a close fight. There's some volatility, especially early. So if he was to lose the first round, I also would look to add live on the Aguilar side. I just think he's a dog. I think he will push harder, deeper into the fight. So if he goes out there, loses a wide round one, I'm willing to go say, hey, at plus 200, I'll give him a chance to come back in this fight. So just a live betting angle. We don't always discuss those on the show, but that's something I might look for here. If Jesus Aguilar goes down early in the contest, but looks like his opponent might be slowing down.
Yeah.
Next up,
Sorry, I did mention that to the Patreon guys, man. I said the only way that Mendonca wins this one is a submission, man, in round one, because Aguilar, like you said, he does make mistakes on the mat, but I'm just counting on him to be safe and get into round two, and then it's all Aguilar from then on. But yeah, Mendonca is live by submission. Jesus does put himself into some shit positions, man, but I think he should stay safe.
Hell yeah. So next up, man, we got Christian Quinonez taking on Raoni Barcelos. And if you guys have noticed, we've got all small people on the card, right? All under 155 pounds. We're back in the bantamweight division here. And Raoni Barcelos and Christian Quinonez, two guys I think that are, looking to make a statement, get an impressive win, because they're both coming off of really devastating losses, right? And when you look at that fact, I think that when I'm looking at a guy in Quinonez, Kyung-Ho Kang is not a bad fighter, right? And I think people kind of are down on Kyung-Ho Kang because he doesn't fight all that often. He's kind of had a mixed level of competition throughout his run. But I think Kyung-Ho Kang is just a pretty dangerous fight. He's got some power in his hands. He's well-rounded. He's got some submission skills as well. So tough out for Quinonez there. This is not an easy out, though. Raoni Barcelos does have skills. He's probably better than him at every aspect of MMA, if you just broke it down skill for skill. But I always say timing is everything in mixed martial arts, right? It's like, this isn't Raoni Barcelos who's out there, winning all these fights. This is Raoni Barcelos when he's starting to dip, I think, in terms of both his durability, but also he's starting to dip in his, reaction time. Like, I think when you look at Raoni Barcelos, a lot of what made him special is he was fast. He was on point with his timing. And now you're just seeing a lot more times, like the Victor Henry fight. I bet Victor Henry there. And man, I did not think it would be that easy, right? I would have bet a lot more money on Victor Henry if I thought he was going to go out there and dance around him, land 100 significant strikes, and wobble it. Like, there was many times in that fight where I felt like Raoni Barcelos was looking off into traffic. Like, he was like, where are we? What's going on? And that's not a good look, right? Because Victor Henry's not a power puncher. And Christian Quinonez is a power puncher, right? I think he's going to go out there and try and kick his head off, punch him in the head as hard as he can. And I do think he'll be live throughout the contest as a result. Now, on the other side of things, if you're getting submitted in the first round by Kyung-Ho Kang, you could obviously get submitted by Raoni Barcelos. He is a very good ground player. He just is not persistent with his ground game very often in the UFC. He comes back and forth with what he wants to approach. Sometimes he's out there, want to apply the boxing craft. I think after getting knocked out brutally, you maybe go out there and try and mix in those takedowns, go out there and wrestle and grapple a little bit. But I have to feel like Quinonez at plus money would be my money line side here. Another Mexican underdog that I don't think people are going to like to back here because he's coming off of a loss, coming off a submission loss against a very good player like Raoni Barcelos. But for me, I just don't know that I can trust the physicality, the durability of present day Raoni Barcelos. So for me, that's my thoughts on this fight. How do you feel?
Yeah, not to add too much, man. You kind of covered it. I like Quinonez. I like him by decision. I think this is a bit suspect, putting Raoni on this card. He's the second oldest fighter. Him and Silva in the first fight, I think they're both 36. One's 37, some shit like that. So, yeah, he's old, man. He is declining a bit. The speed's going. He's another guy like RoboCop. You bet him by sub 1 million times and he doesn't fucking do it. So I ain't getting burnt there again. Quinonez, good lateral movement. Good cardio. He's on his toes for the full 3 rounds. I like that about him. He does have fast hands. I like that also. And yeah, I just think Raoni from Instagram hasn't trained much, kind of doing the same stuff. Looks a bit stale. So yeah, I like Quinonez and I like the decision, man. I like to look at the board. I like to write it all down. Who's going to win? How many favorites are going to win? What's the method? And as I'm going up from the prelims upwards, we're due a decision. This is a smoke break fight for me. Not really interested. So, yeah, Quinonez decision if you ask him.
Very interesting. I would lean a little bit more towards the KO here, and I wish it wasn't so, but I just have a bad feeling that late in this fight, Raoni Barcelos won't be able to take the shots if he's getting hit. I just think that the power difference is there from Victor to this fight. Shout out to our guy, Dan, says, breaks my heart how washed Raoni is. Should have waited for the Assunção fight. Fact. Instead decided to fight an unknown Russian, never got back on track. That's true. And Raoni Barcelos is one of these Brazilian guys. There's many of them. that you could look through over the years. Very talented, very skilled. The UFC keeps them out of primetime positions. They keep them out of the limelight. They do not give them fights while they're relevant, while they're young. And it's on purpose, right? Like if they don't think they can promote you, if they don't think you're going to go out there and get these dynamic finishes and go talk shit and do the things that they want, then they're going to bury you on prelims. They're going to have you fight the hardest guys. They're going to give you a tough strength of schedule. And I think that's kind of the results that we've seen. 6-4 in the UFC for Raoni Barcelos. And a lot of people think he's going to win every fight. That, I think he was one of the biggest favorites to lose that year when he lost to Victor Henry. So, a lot of confidence in Raoni Barcelos. I just haven't seen it backed up by the recent performances. That being said, man, let's move to this next fight where we've got Manuel Torres taking on Chris Duncan. We'll let you lead this one off, Rich.
Well, shit, man. When I first, I didn't look at the line, did the breakdowns and shit. I looked at the line thinking it was going to be 250, minus 250 for Torres. And then it was almost pick'em, man, which had me a bit fucking off. I didn't know what to make of it. So I waited and I've missed the line. I think Torres is going to win. I watched the interview from Duncan, didn't like it. I went and looked at his record some more, actually watched some more of his fights in depth. Didn't like that either. He couldn't take down the Ashmos guy who injured his arm in round 1. That was a bad look, especially considering you think he's got to get some takedowns in this fight. I don't see him doing it against this guy who's literally built like a fucking a silverback, man. Fully on the steroids, all the Mexican fucking supplements that they've got. So I do think Torres KO is a tiny bit square. I think that, Duncan, he's shown he wobbles a bit in that Slava fight, obviously, and that guy, Charlie Campbell. But I like the submission, man. I like the guillotine from Torres simply because I think Duncan's going to push the takedowns. He's from ATT, Mike Bryan. They're going to have a decent game plan. I see him implementing a wrestling-heavy game plan, but to no avail. And I've seen Torres snatch up that guillotine, man. He likes it. He does it fast. And, he's got a tight squeeze, man. And the number's nice. I think the KO is unplayable. It's like plus 125. I don't like that. But I say this about Torres. He's due a loss, man. I don't like his game at all. You see in the Camacho fight, as soon as he gets hit, man, he says red and he just fucking goes for it. He gets a bit wild in there. He's a bit predictable with his striking. Doesn't have like a huge shot selection. What have I got down here? He throws the left hook and the right cross, leads with a right uppercut, and that's pretty much his shot selection. He opens up with calf kicks, like he's a real technical fighter. But then as soon as you hit him, man, everything just goes out the window and he just tries to take your head off. I don't think he likes the adversity. I'm not sure about his cardio. We haven't really seen it yet. He hasn't been to round 2 that often. But yeah, from Duncan, he's talking about he's been in some fucking tent to get used to this elevation and he didn't like it. To me, that doesn't translate to now your cardio is going to be great and you're going to be good at this this elevation in Mexico, especially with the weight cut that he has. Obviously, he hasn't incorporated that while he's using this fucking tent. So I don't know, man. I think he's gonna think he's well prepared, and then in round 1 when he's fucking blowing halfway through, I think he's gonna realize he's out of his depth, man. The Morales fight, Morales was like 37, 38, went to split decision, was getting tagged to fuck. Just seems pretty basic to me, Duncan. Just meat and potatoes guy, man. He's got a 1-2, doesn't use his distance well either. Should I go on? That'd do, wouldn't it?
Fair play. This is another point of minor disagreement for us. I think at the current number, the money line side is probably Duncan here. And I say that because I think Manuel Torres is a fine fighter, but I do think there's a lot of confidence being placed in him on the strength of beating Nicholas Mota, who is not very durable. He got knocked the hell out by Jim Miller, right? And everybody thought last time he was going to get crushed by Tom Nolan, right? Like everybody was 100% convinced of that before the fact. I'm not saying I felt differently, but like that's the reality of the situation. Everybody thought Mota wasn't UFC level. Then he goes out there and gets a win. Okay, fair play. Previous to that, Frank Camacho. Does he have a win in the UFC in the last 5 years? Like Frank's been around. He's a tough guy, been around the regional scene and all this stuff. He's like going life and death with Justin James. I mean, let's just be serious about that too. So like he's had some winnable fights. Colton England, not very durable, right? I bet plus 600 Manuel Torres by knockout in that fight on Contender Series. By the way, cap the Contender Series. You can get an edge. In any case, it's like I had Colton England on the money line there, Rich, because I was like, I want my unit back if this guy doesn't win by knockout. I felt like he was that fraudulent on the ground. Now, has he gotten better on the ground? I'm sure of it, right? You can find pictures of him back training with Brandon Moreno in 2017 in front of a Renzo Gracie logo. Renzo Gracie, stand out, baby. But when we're talking about this fight, I think that's the way you try and get value, right? You try and extract value by either getting involved with the submission prop. Maybe you like Manuel Torres by decision, right? If you want to be really out there, right? It's a fight that minus 700 to go to end inside the distance. So you're like, no, I'm going to find my galaxy brain take on Torres decision. Hey, if those are the ways you want to play it, I'm all for it. But at minus 190, we're saying 65% of the time he's going to win. And here's the one thing I'll say. Maybe I'm biased because I've already been down this road getting fucking burnt by Chris Duncan. But Charlie Campbell, guys, I think is like just as good as Manuel Torres. Maybe I'm dead wrong about that. Maybe I'm biased for the New York guys, but like Charlie Campbell, big, long, huge guy for the lightweight division, landed every single punch he wanted against Chris Duncan, had him wobbled, rocked, dropped, went to a knee, stuffed every takedown, right? Sprawl, kept smashing his head to the mat. And then as soon as he got up, created space, one punch, he died. Instantly killed him with one right hand. I was like, holy shit, this guy's got power. But here's the thing that really, stuck with me, the will to win. Guys, most people just quit. When shit starts going that bad, when you're getting sprawl, face down in the mat, knocked down multiple times, most guys just quit. They shell up, they cover up, and live to fight another day. It's human instinct. Nothing wrong with that. This guy, Chris Duncan, is a psychopath. Like, he is like, I am biting down on the mouthpiece until I die or he does. And I do think those guys at big chalk prices, it's a little bit harder to fade those guys. I do not think he's going to go out there and concede. I don't think he's going to go out there and sell. I think he's going to go out there and try and kill this guy. Now, is he a little bit of a bonehead at times in his approach? Yeah, I would argue the same thing. Like going out there and going strike for strike with Charlie Campbell until you're rocked, then shooting takedowns, not a great game plan or system. But he's also a guy that came up with just like heart, will, intensity, and no skills, right? In my opinion. Now he's training at American Top Team, and I think he's been getting a lot better. The approach against Yanal Ashmouz, I thought was the right approach. Pressure, volume attacks, go for the takedowns, even if you don't get them. And Yanal Ashmouz trains at K Dojo Tribe. That's a lot of good wrestlers. That's a lot of Ruskies. Like, they're going out there trying to take him down every day. So even if he's a little bit banged up, using the fence to your advantage, I don't think Duncan was like, I need to grapple this guy at all costs. I just think he was like, you know what? Like, let me see if I can keep pushing this guy back. Let me see if I can keep putting pressure on him. And I thought, Ashmouz was just fighting for survival at most points in that fight. So I think that Duncan makes mistakes. He fights with a lot of volatility, but I don't think he's going to quit on you. Like, when you talk about reasons to bet on underdogs that go out there and fight hard for your money, that's one criteria that you look for. I do think Duncan fits that criteria. I think he will go out there and fight hard for your money. Me and you disagree about the interview, right? And I had said that to you from the outset. It's like, I like the interview from Duncan. I thought he sounded like a guy who doesn't do shit all else but fight mixed martial arts. Like, he gets up, does MMA shit, and that's it. That's what I kind of like about him, right? I think his family is back in Scotland, and my man is just posted up at the dorms at ATT, training. And his coaches are like, bro, train less. Like, this is what's happening to the guy. It's like they're pulling him back because he works so damn hard, because he's insanely motivated. So again, when I look at Manuel, I'm like, this guy's got skill, raw potential, checks a lot of boxes, but he had a huge height advantage, reach advantage against a lot of these guys. They're going to be a similar enough size. And I just think Duncan is not a pushover. I don't think he's afraid of this guy. I think he's going to try and fight him. So he could get killed. I think he could get rocked and then submitted. Absolutely. I think the ends by sub is potentially value here, because I've seen Torres break when he's in some, extended grappling situations. And I do think Duncan will try and keep pushing him at elevation. I don't think that it's a known quantity that Torres is going to fall off or Duncan's going to fall off. I think there's some unknowns. Unknowns for me push the line a little bit closer to 50-50. So there's my screed about why I think Duncan could represent a live underdog, and also why I think the value could be on the end sub, Torres sub, Duncan sub. Like, I just think these guys could end up grappling as well. A fight that's minus 700 to end inside the distance. Nobody thinks that it's going to be a submission in either direction. It's like, okay, that doesn't make mathematical sense to me, really. But
do you know what I say about that? I mentioned this to you already. What's to say? Yeah, I know Scottish people, man, and I think I know Duncan well. I think he's going to get shook. I think he's opening up the main card. You know, he talked about this in the interview. He talked about in his first fight in the UFC, they were making a documentary about him. It gave him the jitters. You know, it made him nervous. I think he's got that in him, man. And I think in the hostile crowd in Mexico, knowing he's got this fucking steroided freak in front of him, he's going to get scared. You know, he's just going to open up with some calf kicks. He's going to be scared to engage in the fight. And yeah, I just don't believe he's for real, man. And what you said about, you know, he's got his family at home. He's all in here at the ATT, at the dorms. That's because the alternative is being a bricklayer back at home, man. And he hasn't got a choice but to be all in. So yeah, I just think he's a meat and potatoes guy, very basic and very vulnerable, man. We've seen that in him. So too brittle, man.
I feel you. And if he was a minus 110 here, I'd have to be jumping on board with Manuel Torres. But I think the correction has been made. I would probably put it like, and then again, this is gut feel. I could get a little bit more specific after taping this in more depth because I haven't bet the fight. But from my memory and also from my research so far, I probably could put it closer to like minus 135, minus 150 for the Manuel Torres side. So I think, you know, the value side has tipped to the plus 160 on Duncan, but I don't think it's like immense value, you know, crazy. I just think, you know, it's probably getting a little bit generous for a guy that is going to go out there and push a 15-minute pace, in my view. But yeah, I do agree that he could get chinned in this fight, and Charlie Campbell should have closed the show there. But I think Charlie Campbell's a dog, and he fights hard, and he's a guy that really wanted to win. He was highly motivated. He had a lot of momentum. He checked every box for me at minus 150. And then he got fucking flatlined in a fight that he did everything right. So I was just like, man, do I want to go down this road again?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying when you talk about the lines. Obviously, when I opened up, I said I'd missed the line. You know, it took me too long to do my research, and that's fine. But I think, you know, if he's going to fucking lose, who cares if he's plus 160 or he's plus 200? I don't think that Torres is like minus 250, minus 300 here. Then it's super unplayable. I'm just a guy who likes these underdogs, man. That's what I look for. I rarely play anything over minus 150. And if, you know, if I miss the line, so be it. I'm just off it, or I look for a prop.
Yep. I think you found the right one here. And I do know a couple other shop players looking at that submission prop as well. So hopefully that'll come through for the people. But in any case, my man, we've got another fight here on the main card. Yasmin Jauregui taking on Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes got the UFC experience here. She has been an underdog each and every time out in the UFC, and she's produced. You know, she's had a pretty good record. ROI has been very solid, and now she's a big plus 400 underdog once again in this spot, taking on Jauregui, who has been a little bit shaky so far in the UFC. You know, I bet her you know, in a couple spots, and I thankfully did not have money on her money line against Denise Gomes. I did have the sub prop, I think, small in that fight. And unfortunately, the fight was over, 30 seconds in. You know, we didn't get to see much grappling there from Yasmin Jauregui because she was doing the salsa. But I think that this is a spot where Jauregui is obviously the A side that the UFC would like to promote, but it's a very steep price, I do feel, from a money line standpoint to back her here. I do think Sam Hughes is the money line side, but I also think there's a chance she just gets run over here. Jauregui, I've always liked the tape that she had pre-UFC. Is it always perfect? No, but she just seemed physical, aggressive, like she knew what she was doing. Yaz Jitsu, I think, was her name on Instagram. I don't know if it still is. Like, she had a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when she arrived to the UFC, had some skills in multiple positions. So I just felt like she was a girl, you know, that had real upside and potential, young woman coming into the UFC. And it hasn't panned out yet. Denise Gomes, powerful puncher, took her by surprise, caught her early, caught her cold. You know, but the Yasmin Lucinda fight, I think, is a good win. But Yasmin Lucindo took that on short notice, made it a very competitive fight. I thought she was going to win that inside the distance. Ended up being closer than I expected it to be. Despite me respecting Lucindo, even at the time, I just thought that Jauregui was the higher caliber prospect. So she's let me down like across the board so far. Like even Estela Nunes, like I just don't rate that as a win. I don't know what to make of that. So I'd like to see Jauregui go out there and show something in this fight. I think if she wins this fight, I lean towards it being inside the distance, in dominant fashion. I do think Sam Hughes can get hit with a lot of clean shots in her fights. I think she's been put in a lot of terrible positions. Not everybody's been able to capitalize. I think of Jacqueline Amorim, a girl who came in first fight, kind of gassed out a little bit, right? Gave too much in the first round looking for the finish, didn't get it. I think there's lessons to be learned from that. I think that we saw she could be dominated positionally there. And Emery, very high-level grappler, but not as proficient with the ground and pound at that time. Then she addressed that for her next fight with Conejo, and we cashed in at the 16-1 KO. This is a fight where I think Jauregui, if she's able to get to top positions, can be dominant with her grappling potentially. We've seen Sam Hughes get submitted regionally. We've seen her get into some bad positions before. And also she takes some damage when she's in those bottom positions. So I think Jauregui needs to be smart, needs to say, hey, let me protect my chin here. Let me get back on track. Let me get some takedowns, dominate some top position, use my strength and my physicality. And I think she can get the win doing so. But if it turns into a back and forth fight, I think she probably gets the decision. It's hometown. It's this, that, and the other. It's just like Sam Hughes, I know, is going to go out there and fight hard and try and be a gritty competitor. And if she can extend you, she can come back on people. We've seen that. That Amorim fight, that's a tough first round. That's a round that breaks a lot of people mentally. She came back and was able to get the win there. So not counting her out, but I just think Jauregui projects a little bit higher. Definitely the prospect the UFC would like to get over the hump here. How do you feel, Rich?
Yeah, I don't know what you're saying, but I'm calling her Yasmin because it's much easier for me. So I am counting Hughes out. I don't think she's got a shot here. Yeah, the line's wide for women's MMA, but I think it's kind of justified if you want to say that. They've got Yasmin listed as 5'3", man. But then when I was, watching some shit on Instagram, she was the same height as fucking Quinonez. So I don't think that's true. If you send anything on that. She looks at least 5'6", 5'7". But yeah, she's got everything you want in women's MMA, man. She's on all the steroids. Go look at her Instagram, man. She's strong, powerful, got good cardio, tenacious. She does have a deficiency when it comes to the ground, but I don't think that Sam can get it there. Like I said, physicality, she's just too strong, Yasmin. I really like Sam as well. It's a shame to see her take this L. I think Yasmin's going to win it in the distance. It was plus 180, something like that. I would take the KO, but like you said, man, it's fucking women's MMA. Anything can happen. Although she hasn't subbed before, this could be the first time. So I'm not getting burnt being greedy. And yeah, she let me down in the last spot as well when she got knocked out. But I think she's learned from that, man. She's obviously fucking, her style's typical Mexican, man. They don't take a back step, pressure, forward, aggression. But in her interview, she said, she's learned to be a bit smarter, which leads me to believe she's going to be more calculated. She's not just going to go head first and throw 4 or 5 punch combinations. I wouldn't even mind if she did do that in this fight, to be honest, because I don't think Sam's got anything to come back at her with. Sam hasn't got any power. In my opinion, she's a grinder, likes to push you against the cage, excellent cardio, notoriously. But I just don't think any of those things are going to work against Yasmin. Yasmin's got a nice judo trip as well. I've seen her get on top of girls. Sam, she bruises easily as well. I could see this being stopped by a doctor stoppage in round 2 or 3. So I think the way to play this is Yasmin in the distance, Yasmin round 2 and round 3. It was 750 for round 2 and 10-1 for round 3 for Yasmin, and I think that's great value, man. I think she fucks Sam up. There's just too many differences between them, man. The physicality, the hands, the combo she throws. I think Sam's fucked, man.
Yeah, we tend to see this one the same way. I think Sam will win more fights in the UFC if they keep her around. Like, she's a tough girl. She's going to go out there and compete with everybody, never be a pushover. But physicality is a real thing, and Amorim rushed some positions. She was desperate for the submission.
Debut as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Jauregui, on the other hand, more prepared now, couple of fights under her belt, probably on paper, her easiest opponent to this point. So it's almost understandable why she's more heavily favored here. But I do think they could have given her an easier opponent, right? Like they could have found an easier landing, but still, it's like they're trying to do some progression, get her a fight that she's going to learn something, get better. It's not just a complete walkover, but I do think, to your point, later on in the fight, she should be able to get to her dominant positions and finish. Next up, my man, we got Raul Rosas Jr. taking on Ricky Pretty Boy Turcios, or Pretty Ricky, whatever it is. Man, I like Ricky, right? Like, I think he's a fun guy. I think he's got a nice personality, but when you're talking about a fighter's nice personality, that's not a great sign. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
I've had some people tell me that Rosas is going to lose. I believe that they've seen the C-Rod fight and just see, this is C-Rod all over again. You got someone on Ricky who, he's pretty durable. He's got excellent cardio. He just doesn't fuck off. He's always in the fight. So I think that's what they're seeing. He can survive round one and then put it on Rosas and break him and either get the decision or finish him. But yeah, I'm not with that, man. I think Ricky, he's been off a while now. He had no fights last year. I couldn't find the reason for that, but he's been off for a minute. He's very hittable on the feet. His distance management is pretty much non-existent. But Rosas doesn't really have the hands on the feet. I know he finished it. Well, he knocked Terence Mitchell down, but so what? I don't think he's going to cause Ricky any problems on the feet. But what he is going to do, Rosas, is take him down with ease. Ricky's got bad takedown defense. He's always on his back. I've seen him against people like Brady when he fought him. He was getting wrestle fucked in that fight, and he was giving up bad positions, man, where if Brady had better jiu-jitsu, he could have snatched up the neck, got a submission. I think this is tailor-made for Rosas. I think he's going to take him down and likely get a finish in round one. But if he doesn't, I don't mind him winning the decision, man. I don't think he's going to insta-gas in this fight. I give him allowances for the C-Rod fight, man. I think C-Rod's a bit different from Ricky in their approach and in their jiu-jitsu. C-Rod's more composed. He does the right things. He's patient. Where Ricky, he's frantic. He's trying to throw stuff up. He'll scramble and try and get to his feet too quickly. He'll leave his neck open, trying to do that. So he's going to give Rosas all the opportunity to get a finish. Rosas likes to put the body triangle on, so that's good. If he locks that in, you ain't going anywhere for the round, man. It's just going to be him hunting for the rear naked choke all round. So I'd be wary playing the submission. You could get burnt. It could literally be Rosas just putting the body triangle on each round and riding him out for the decision. But I've parlayed Rosas, to be honest. I got reverse CLV because I looked the next day and Rosas was like minus 210. I was like, what the fuck's going on? So, yeah, I think money's coming in on Ricky, man. People think he's going to outlast Rosas and put it on him. I watched Rosas in an interview with, what's that Jackson podcast, man, or whatever it is, with the black heavyweight, Quinton Jackson. Yeah, I didn't like what he was doing in that interview, man. Rosas, he was talking about his dad's his coach, his brother's his training partner. He was wearing sunglasses indoors, which is a major red flag. I don't like to see that. It's just retarded. I like to fade people who wear their sunglasses indoors. Maverick, I remember when she did it, the fight against Jasmine Judificius. Rodriguez is doing it as well at media day. It's just spastic, man. So, yeah, I like Rosas. Think he gets it done. Could be a submission round one. Maybe sprinkle that and then just parlay him with somebody. But I think he rolls here, man. I don't think Ricky's going to get it done. I think it's been overstated, these cardio issues for Rosas.
This is a fight where I do expect Raul to get the job done. But last time out, he burnt me really bad with the fact that he just went out there and knocked out Terence Mitchell, right? I think I had the best market price by, an insane amount on the ends by sub there. And he just went out there and smoked him in the first round via knockout. And he was very aggressive. And I know Terence Mitchell's, nothing to write home about, right? But if you look at Ricky, he's a kind of competent grappler. Is he very good? No, but like he has basic core competencies. He knows where to grab. He knows where to roll. He just is getting outworked, outpositioned by guys that are faster, more dynamic, more athletic. That's always going to happen to him. I feel like there's some things that you can correct, some things you can't, right? Athletic upside, athletic potential, you can't really change that. Raul Rosas, the reason he's here at 19 years of age is he has those things, right? He's very physically strong. He's been grappling with these guys at a professional level for a long time. So I think that Raul should have a lot of physical upside in this matchup. And I think sometimes we underrate how much that physical upside can lead to TKOs, right? We've seen Ricky get put out by Mana Martinez, who didn't have very much success in the UFC so far. Got, let's say, mixed reviews for Mana Martinez. He absolutely flatlined him with a left hook, put him down in the first round. Am I saying that Raul Rosas Jr. is going to do that? I don't know. But I'm just saying, like last time out, I didn't expect him to go out there and just swing wild and kill Terrence Mitchell with one punch. And that's kind of what that looked like. And he was super aggressive. Even when it went to the ground, he was not looking for the sub, right? I always say, I like to look for what people preference. There's a lot of guys, they'll hit you with a big shot. Even as soon as you get rocked, they're flying to your back to try and get the choke in. That's just the way they operate. That's not the case with this guy, at least in that last fight. Last fight, he was mad. He was pissed that people were talking shit about him online. He was pissed that people were saying this guy can't fight and this guy's scared or whatever. And he was like, oh, screw that. I've been fighting since I was 15. I've been fighting since I was a kid. Like, I'm going to go out there and punch this guy right in his face. And against Ricky Turcios, I mean, is there a huge amount of danger coming back? Like, on the, like, if you're Raul, are you like afraid that Ricky's going to punch you up a bunch? Like, yeah, he can throw some volume. He went out there and threw like 1,000,000 shots against Damon Zahabi, landed like 14 of them. Like he just was like willing to throw from distances that were not having a chance of getting there. And because he was afraid of the power coming back from Damon Zahabi, in my humble opinion. After he got hit with a couple shots early, he was like, yo, I don't need that shit in my life. I'll throw it from out here. And if you want to run into it, fair play. If not, we'll just do this for 15. And I just don't think Raul is like that. I don't think Raul is like Damon Zahabi, like draw a line in the sand and say, hey, if you want to cross this, I won't cross it either, but like, well, somebody's going to cross this. Like, that's what Damon Zahabi does very well. He mitigates the amount that you can land on him. And if you come in crazy, he will counter you. When you look at this fight, I'm like, Raul might just come in crazy. Is Ricky going to counter him? I'm not sold on that. I feel like he can just come in and kind of get off with offense. So I think if this becomes an extended fight, I would be a little bit nervous on Raul at the big money line price. Only reason being, Ricky is a guy who's just like, he doesn't fuck off, right? Like, if you don't finish him, if you don't brutally knock him out, if you don't choke him, he's going to be in there. He's going to be touch. He's going to be throwing shit. He's going to be being silly and smiling and whatever. He likes getting in fights. Like, I don't think that he has any problem getting his ass whooped. I think that's just part of the job for him. But I just think in this spot, the athletic upside, the youth, the fact that Raul Rosas, I think, is going to be getting cheered out the building. I think people are going to be playing the guitars with him. I think they're going to be yelling and singing along to the theme song. And I think he's going to come across like a star. And I think he's going to perform like one as well. I think he's probably going to finish the fight in the early going. That's the way I'm seeing this. So Raul Rosas Jr., inside the distance early on. That's how I see it. But I do think it's not impossible this fight goes to distance. Ricky's not a pushover. He's not a bitch. But I just think he's going to be athletically outmatched here. And I think he's going to be put in bad positions too early. How do you feel, Rich? You had something to add?
Yeah, do you know what I think the difference is? And someone asked me about whether playing Rosas by KO. And I said, no, it's not going to happen. And I still maintain it's not. And you said it yourself. Ricky's not a bitch. Terrence Mitchell was a bitch, man. He shelled up. Ricky ain't shelling up for you, man. He ain't quitting on you. If anything, he's going to give up the choke. And if he doesn't, it's going to decision. And also, unlike Ricky's other opponents who held him down, Rosas puts that body triangle on, man. And once that's on, I don't think Ricky's going anywhere. So it's just going to be him defending the choke. I don't think he's going to get back up. And I don't think he's got the physicality. Although Rosas is 19, I think he's the more physical guy here. And I think when they get to the mat, that's going to count a lot. So it's literally, if you can get a line on Rosas submission or decision, I think that's an excellent bet, man. But yeah, I think he rolls here. No problem.
Okay. All I'm saying is I would tread lightly on the Subver decision. I'd rather take the money line at that point. But in any case, I wish everybody the best of luck, however you target it. But for me, I think Raul Rosas live by all methods. I think Turcios would have to fight a very smart, careful, calculated fight here and push really hard late into the fight. And at elevation, that might be hard to do. But the cardio concerns, I do think are somewhat warranted given the elevation in this fight. I want to see Raul prove that he can push hard for those 15 minutes. But as far as I'm concerned, he can easily win this fight in the first round. So that's the way I'm looking at it. Raul Rosas Jr., and I think he's going to get it done ITD, but I wish everybody the best. Next up, Daniel Zellhuber, the Golden Boy, taking on Francisco Prado. Rich, why don't you take this one away?
Well, at first, I told everyone to leave this fight. It was the only one I couldn't get a read on. Seen some stuff midweek, watched a bit more tape, and now my official prediction is Zellhuber by decision plus 190. I think both guys are on the source. Both guys are durable, but Zellhuber with that height and reach advantage, and the fact that Prado is a bit flat off his back. I've seen him muscle his way out of positions, just using, some physicality, but Zellhuber's too big, man. I think Zellhuber's going to look for submissions once they get to the ground at certain points in the fight and won't find it. And I think he'll just burn down the clock. Zellhuber doesn't use his range well for how rangy he is as a fighter. He's always getting tagged by everybody. But, let's have a look at the actual fucking metrics, man. Prado, 6'1" reach, and Zellhuber's 7'7", man. It's just too much to make up, to be honest. Like I said, Zellhuber gets cracked by people, but Pedro's a little midget in there, man. So I don't think Zellhuber's going to catch him with something on the feet. I think Prado's going to stay safe. He's game, he's young, dumb, full of what. And it just leads me to believe it's going to be Zellhuber decision.
Fighting spirit and Modelo, right?
Yeah, man. The guy's game as fuck. Argentina against Mexico. So, yeah, should be a spicy affair. But, yeah, I like decision, man. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think losing to Jamie Malarkey, not a great look. It's on short notice, but, Jamie Malarkey, who else fought him on short notice? Muhammad Naimov. How did that go? Right? Up a weight class, knocks him dead. So I think Prado can go out here and compete, no doubt about it. But I do think that showed his wrestling, his grappling, definitely a work in progress, let's say. When you look at that Ottman Azaitar fight, nice product. Go out there, get the win, bounce back. Now he's got that 1-1 record, back to 500 in the UFC. Did everything right. Ottman Azaitar doesn't have a great chin. I don't think I'm sold on the Azaitar brothers as UFC level commodities. I think they more so are like UFC like role players. Shout out to Martian. I think he uses that phrase, role player. That's a good one for the Azaitar brothers, I feel, because they are fighters. They go out there and scrap, but they're just not very high level. I feel like they're more connected politically. So when I look at this spot, I'm like, man, Francisco Prado did everything right, but now he's got a tough assignment next time out, right? Zellhuber, I do think Zellhuber is somebody I have a difficulty trusting because he went out there in his first couple of fights and he just didn't show the level of consistency I wanted to see. Lucas Almeida, right? He's been dealt with accordingly in the UFC, right? A couple guys have gone out there and dispatched that guy and showed his level. Not this guy, right? He went out there, had a very close fight, back and forth scrap. Nothing wrong with that. Both young guys, but like that's something I'm keeping in the back of my mind. Close fight, outworked him there, but close. Then I'm looking at like, all right, he goes out there, let down spot, doesn't go out there and throw, stands there and watches the fight passing by with Trey Ogden. But we always talk about people have UFC jitters, they underperform. No problem. The fight against Lando Venata, I mean, he had him dead to rights at certain points. Lando Venata has been finished by a number of guys in the division, right? He's had struggles at times staying conscious in his fights, like staying aware. He gets hurt, rocked, wobbled in some of his spots. He's tough, no doubt about that. But the way he was not able to close the show there, I was a little disappointed by that. To your point about the decision, that speaks to that, right? Maybe the finishing instincts aren't perfect. And then to go out there and get rocked by Giagos, again, Giagos starts hot. He comes out there and tries to fire, but he fights very nervous, man. He's like one of the most like jittery and like tense fighters I've ever seen in the UFC. I've always felt that way about him. And I think that's why he gets finished in all his losses, right? Like when you're super tense and jittery, it's going to make you gas out fast. And I think that's what happened there. He came out like a ball on fire and he gassed out really bad. That made Zellhuber look really good. But the things that concern me is number one, now he's got, the contract and all those things that me and you have discussed. And then on top of that, I'm like, golden boy, Dana's sworn enemy, right? Oscar De La Hoya. They could have given him an easier fight, I feel like. Obviously Prado is small, but he's young. And to your point, he's tough. He wants to come out here and fight. Maybe they're saying, like, let's get this guy 15 minutes in the cage. Let's get him, a guy he can, use that length, that jab. That all makes sense to me. But it does just give me some mild concern because I do think Prado is going to be a prick about it. Like, he's not going away easy here. I think he's going to walk him down. I think he's going to try and stay in his face. And he might land some big shots. He might rock Zellhuber at a certain point in this contest. And then it's about, can Zellhuber recover? Can he stay disciplined? Or can he do the Ian Gary against Jeff Neal? Can he stay on his bike? Can he just show, hey, I have the ability to outmaneuver, use my footwork, use all my skills as a martial artist? I think that's what we need to see from Zellhuber here, but it is priced prohibitively for me because both these guys are under 25 years of age. And I always mention, Rich, if you have two guys under 25, either one of them could lose and be rebuilt tomorrow, right? They get two big wins. They're back on top. They're the next great thing. It's like, you're young enough that it's no problem if you take an L. And that's one thing I want to keep in the back of my mind for some of these younger Mexican prospects on the come up here, something to consider. But with that being said, man, let's move to the next fight where I am excited to talk about this one because, it feels like the MMA community has a very short-term memory, Rich. When we were talking about this fight on my show last time that this was booked way back, I had mentioned I thought that both guys were live to win the fight by all methods, basically. I was like, man, like, I don't know why everybody's counting out Yair Rodriguez in this fight. I was like, 70% of people think he's got no chance to win this. They're saying he's sub or bust. And I didn't feel that way. I think Brian has power in his hands. Is he the greatest striker we've ever seen in the UFC? No. But did he drop Alexander Volkanovski with a punch? Yeah. Like, was it the cleanest one? He caught the leg and then hit him with a right hand. I would say Volk was a little bit wobbled there by the fact that he then had to defend submissions for the next minute and a half in that fight. So Brian's hit him with a big shot, dropped Korean Zombie and out-wrestled him clinically over the course of 25 minutes. Like, Brian Ortega had done a lot of things well. So I get why people liked him in that spot. But I just thought Yair was the same kind of guy. I was like, man, he's a tough guy too. He could go out there and win this fight. Now, Rich, you'd think Brian Ortega's been shot 10 times. He got old Yellard out in the backyard. Like, this guy can't fight no more. I don't know the evidence that supports that, right? Because if you look, the public perception has changed on a dime. Now everybody thinks it's a clear walkover for Yair, and he's the Mexican fighter fighting in Mexico. Brian Ortega is a Mexican-American, right? He comes out with the Mexican flag. Is he a guy that's just like scorning his Mexican heritage? No, he's not. Like, he leans into it. And on the other side of things, it's like, okay, let's look at the comparative pricing, right? Last time out, I got plus 145 on Yair Rodriguez. Thought it was a great price. I thought I should have been a pick'em. Now you're getting plus 130, plus 140, plus whatever on Brian Ortega. It's like, should this have been a pick'em the first time or not? In my opinion, it should have been. You got two guys that are both dangerous, all positions. But on the one hand, you've got Brian Ortega, clear wrestling and grappling upside, right? He's the better, more proven guy in those phases. And in his last 4 UFC fights, he's recorded a takedown in every single one of them against very high-level fighters. Is that an accident? Is it a coincidence? People are saying that Brian can't wrestle. He took down Yair last fight. Like, yes, it ended in a bad scenario, but it's like he got the takedown before the fight ended. So I do think of this fight as very volatile. I don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but I would have to assume that the betting value is on Brian Ortega as an underdog because last time people thought it was a sure thing, a lock that he's going to win the fight. And they told me even worse, Rich, after the fact, that it was a fluke, that he should have never won the fight, that it was bullshit and it was an injury, right? And so let's then record, okay, what's happened in the interim? Brian got a shoulder surgery to fix his shoulder, right? Like, he needed to do that. That was the way it was. He hurt himself in the fight. So there was not going to be a comeback unless he gets the surgery. Okay, fair play. Is he so old? Is he 36, 37, 38? He can't come back. I mean, Josh Emmett, literally that age, come back from multiple surgeries, fought for the title, gave Ilya his hardest fight in the UFC. Like, you could just go on and on with the list there. And when I look at this back, I say, all right, let's look at the comparative line. Minus 175 last time to plus 145 this time. How about against Volkanovski, right? Against the great. I've bet 3 times against Volkanovski, Rich. Do you know the 3? It's funny. Ilya Taporia, the guy who got it, right? We were there. Everybody was there last week. God bless you guys. Hope you guys cashed into. But the other 2 guys were the 2 halves of this fight, this co-main event, this 5-round banger. I bet both of them for half a unit. But that's why I remember the prices very well, Rich. It was plus 150, Brian Ortega, the night that he fought Alexander Volkanovski. He's a fucking pick 'em, I believe, with Max Holloway the night that he fought him. Okay. So this is a guy who's been highly respected throughout his career by the betting market. And now he's a bum. He's washed and he sucks. And Yair, who the betting market has always been skeptical hippo eyes on, right? Like come back and forth on, he was plus 300 against Volkanovski. That's why I bet it. I was like, man, plus 300, how wrong could you be? I was like, the guy who's going to beat Volk needs to be dynamic. I always thought it would be a Yair, a Josh Emmett, and Ilya Taporia, somebody that could crack. And the reason that I stopped fading Volk is because he survived Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega had him dead to rights in a bunch of bad positions. He hurt him. He landed good shots. He did everything right, and he couldn't get over the hump because that was Volk at the peak of his powers. That was Volk when he fucking refused to lose. And I told people, like, that's the best fighter I've ever seen. The closest that anybody came to beating the best version of Volkanovski was this guy, fucking Brian Ortega. So the idea that he can't win this fight, to me, is fucking farcical. Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, that was pretty passionate, bro. But yeah, I feel the same, man. I feel the same. I don't know who you're speaking to. You need to clean up your timeline, man. Yeah, I like Ortega in this one. I bet Yair the first fight, bet him by KO. Felt I got lucky, and with the short amount of time that fight went on, you know, the sample size we had, like you said, Ortega took him down. Yeah, I do believe it was a freak injury. I think Ortega would have had his way on the mat. I think Brian's got a good stand-up. I don't think he should be wrote off. I don't understand it either. You know, he's still relatively young. I think he's 32. So, yeah, it seems like the price, you know, in the market keeps fluctuating. I see it at like plus 120, and then I see Ortega at plus 140, and it just keeps going back and forth. It doesn't seem to settle. So, yeah, it's wild to me that people are betting Yair in this one, or they've got high confidence in Yair, you know, like he should be a bigger favorite. I think Yair's record shit. I think Frankie had changed his life. Like, what's he done? Got pieced up by Zombie and got a fluke KO. Went 3 rounds with a cooked fucking Jeremy Stevens. The Ortega fight was an injury. Like, I don't like Yair, man. He's not good off his back. Yeah, he got that submission on Josh Emmett. But, you know,
Josh was literally done on the feet in that fight. He got beat up to the body and then the flying knee, which I called the flying knee knockout for Yair, and he flying kneed straight to his own back and then got the triangle.
I think I bet some KO in that fight and got burnt, man. It pissed me off. I think Pepe had the submission, if I remember. It was someone like Pepe. They bet the submission, so that was sharp. But yeah, he did. He fucked him up on the feet. Them leg kicks, Josh didn't want to have. He just didn't want to know, man. But yeah, Ortega in this one, I like him by TKO in this. And the reason why I like him by TKO over the submission is not only the price, but the scar tissue on Yair, man. You look at him after every fight, and he looks like he's gone 10 rounds, man, beaten up by fucking 3 or 4 people. His face is always busted up. I believe he's got scar tissue, you know, similar to like the Diaz brothers who always just open up. And over 5 rounds, man, I think we could get a doctor stoppage. I'd be interested if we can get a doctor stoppage on this fight, on what the line would be on that, because I'd be interested. Ortega has decent hands, man. He's a pressure fighter as well. We've seen that in the first fight that they had. You know, he likes to go forward. And I think he can overwhelm Yair, man, and put it on him. I listened to his interview as well, Ortega. You know, he talked about his game plan. He didn't say it directly, man, but he pretty much said he's going to be taking him down here. You know, it could be a grind and pound finish. Like I said, go back to the Frankie Edgar fight, man, and then the fights after that. I don't think Yair's changed much once he's on his back. I think he can be controlled there. I think he's got a bit of quit in him as well. I know Volkanovski was fucking him up in that fight, but I don't know. I just felt Yair, he kind of just had enough, and he was like, fuck it, just finish me off. That's what she said. But yeah, I like it, Ortega in this one, and I think he gets it done over the in the distance, man, and likely a KO.
Yeah, and the last couple of things I'll add here, just to be brief, is I think Brian Ortega is a guy that has pretty good wrestling, and people that are saying that he doesn't have good wrestling, I think that they're not referring to the evidence. when he went out there against Zombie, he showed nice double legs. He showed nice body lock clinches, and he was getting takedowns to dominant positions. He also was able to go out there and outstrike Korean Zombie pretty clinically. Yair was able to beat him, and it was a great win. I called it many times, and I truly believe this, the greatest knockout in UFC history. But it was also a fight where Yair got beat to shreds, and like that was a back and forth brutal war. They both had a insane fight, and Zombie literally sprinted forward into the shot that killed him with like 1 second left. Any normal person would have just been retreating right at that point. Like there's a few seconds left in the fight, most people would just be backing up with their hands up in the air like I won, like, and instead Zombie is Zombie, so he came forward and put himself at risk. But I think that in this fight, Brian Ortega has a lot to lose, right? He hasn't been there for a while, so he needs this win, in my opinion, to get back on track. But also, Brian has had 18 professional fights. He's 33 years of age. What is the idea that he's washed here compared to Yair, who's been knocked out multiple times in his career, pre-UFC, in the UFC, Frankie Edgar via TKO, last time out against Volk, he got knocked out. And I'm just like, what we've seen is in between the last fight, Brian has been working on his game plan and preparing for the rematch, basically. And Yair fought Josh Emmett. Was that a clinical, easy win? I thought that Yair was going to make that look easier. He had the length, he had the distance, but he was getting taken down by Josh Emmett. He got rocked with a huge punch in that fight, and he was getting beat up on the ground before he got to the second round, landed big shots, hurt Emmett to the body, and then finished him on the ground. But Emmett had a lot of success in that fight that I think people will forget if they don't go back and rewatch the tape. It's why you got to freshen yourself on some of these events that have taken place a while ago. My thought was Yair wrecked. Like that was my memory of it. And he did in round two. In round one, it was very close and honest. Same thing with Korean Zombie and Ortega. I had a memory of Ortega just whooping him on the feet, which he did. But he also took him down at will at various points in the fight. And Zombie's a good wrestler. Zombie is not a bad wrestler. He is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He was still taking him down and getting to good position. So I just think that Yair has shown no improvement that we've seen in his takedown defense over time. Max Holloway took him down when he wanted to, when he needed to. Who else? Freaking Volkanovski. Every time he wanted to, beat him up on the ground. So I think that it's not a fight where it's like Ortega's so easily going to win. I'll never say that. But I thought last time the public perception was wrong that Ortega was a lock. I think this time the public perception that Yair is a lock is also wrong. So for me, it's just an honest fight. Two good fighters, and I think Ortega is the side here at plus money. And to your point, Rich, I think people, should look at the different props here and, evaluate them mathematically and say, hey, does this make sense? Because there's some sharp money that's come in on Ortega by KO based on the numbers I'm seeing in the market. So I'll leave it at that.
What about Taporia, man? What about all the shit Rodriguez is saying overlooking Ortega? It seems like. Looks like he thinks he's sat on fucking...
I loved the difference between their interviews. And the difference was Ortega gave props. He was being honest. He was like, man, Ilya looked great. Like he got the win there. It was impressive stuff. He's like, but I think everything's sorting itself out in the division. And I think we're going to get, that opportunity to maybe take a step forward if we can get a good performance here. Talking about the performance, talking about taking pride in a performance. That's what I want. And when he was talking about that, Yair is on the other side. Like, I don't care if it's I want to fuck him up. Like I just want, and he's like talking about, like you said, somebody else. He's building another fight that's not happening right now. And I do think he is looking past Ortega. Last time out, I don't think Ortega made the best account of himself. Honestly, I thought he looked poor on the feet in the early going there, but I thought he had the right idea. Hey, it's not going well on the feet. Let me take him down. Take down right into an arm lock. I said on the stream that I did years back, and I'll repost the clip if people don't believe it, but I have a snippet that I cut out of that where I said, like, don't be surprised if Yair submits him. Like, just because you're better at jiu-jitsu doesn't mean you can't lose a fight by submission in MMA where shit's wild, where shit's crazy. Yair throws shit up. He attempts stuff. But in taking those risks, you also open yourself up to get your guard passed. That's what was happening against Josh Emmett in the first round. He was attempting subs and getting his guard passed. He attempted subs against Volk and got his guard passed at various points. So aggression, offense, risk-taking is good for winning, but it's also good for losing, right? Like it sets you up to win impressively or lose impressively. And I think that for that reason, leaning towards the underdog play. Next up, my man, let's talk about this main event and close out strong. We got Brandon Moreno taking on Brandon Raw Dog Royval. Short notice replacement. Amir Albazi was supposed to be in this opportunity. and instead he was not able to make it, right? So Brandon Royval stepping up. I heard in an interview that he did, he's talking about, yeah, I thought I was getting a free vacation to Mexico City, and then they called me and they're like, yeah, you got to fight. Like, and he was like flabbergasted by that. It was funny, man. I like Royval, great personality. I'll never forget when he hit, made me look so clairvoyant on the sub-2 call against Kai Kara-France. I just didn't think Kai Kara-France liked the ruckus, and I was like, that's not going to be a good mix with Royval. But I don't think Brandon Moreno is afraid of the ruckus, right? I think he's willing to go into the ruckus. He's a tough guy, former champion, and he hasn't gotten over the hump in Mexico City yet. I think that's why we're here. I think that's why the UFC is like, Brandon, we're going to keep rebooking you in Mexico City until you get this one, dude. And I think when I'm looking at this spot, I say to myself, man, I like what Moreno typically brings to the table in terms of pace, aggression. He mixes it up. He adapts over the course of a fight. Against Kai Kara-France, he's wearing some damage. He was getting hit with some shots. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go to the body and take this guy out. Found his kill shot. That was brilliant stuff. So I like those improvements we've seen. For Royval, I just think all the context, all the circumstance working against him here. Short notice, 5 rounds, up at elevation. I know he trains at elevation, different scale of elevation here. And I don't know how much his preparation will be merited out in this fight. I think it's a bad spot for him. Rich, how do you feel?
Yeah, same as you, man. I think the short notice for Royval isn't good. He's got to do the weight cut as well. He's previously struggled with his weight cuts. He does train at elevation, but this is just different, man. And then you just add all them intangibles into it, and I don't like him for that reason. And then in the style of the fight, man, I think Moreno can have his way with him on the ground. I think the submission is very live for Moreno. And I went back and watched Royval versus Pantoja 2 when it went to decision. And I don't know about you, whether you've watched it recently. Maybe we'll chat about it later. But I felt like Pantoja carried him in that fight, man. Like he carried him to a decision for whatever reason. Like he had top control. He wasn't aggressive with his, transitioning to something to try and close the fight out. He was content to just burn the clock, and he did that in multiple rounds, man. Maybe he had like some niggling injury during the fight or some shit, but it was bizarre to me because I felt like Pantoja could have just sliced through him and got the submission. So that was a bit weird to me, man. But I think Moreno is just going to be completely different. I like Moreno sub 2 and 3. I think that's a good look. I think Royval would be good for a round. But another angle I like to hit, man, when people take fights on short notice or when they're stepping into the UFC on short notice, making their debut against somebody, I like to hit the submission because I tend to think the mentality of the fighters is going to be, I'm expected to lose this fight. I'm going to try, give it my all in round 1. But, the short notice, the gassing in fights, it just makes...
They'll give me a pass.
Man. Yeah, just give it up. I know I fucking would. I think fight to live another day. UFC ain't going to cut me. They're going to reward me in my next fight, which they do. Hopefully Royval's got that same mentality and he just gives it up in round 2 or 3. So I like Moreno by submission. They've just opened the PI in Mexico. Moreno is a great representation of, Mexican fighters, the way he fights. He's a cool guy. He's a nice guy. I think they're going to set up Pantoja and Moreno after he gets this win. They might even announce it shortly after the fight. But I like Moreno in this one, man. His money line's a bit shit, but I don't know why people would be betting his money line in a 5-round fight on short notice for Royval at elevation. I'd be hitting the props if I was you, and I am, man. I like the submission.
Yeah, I was going to keep this close to the vest, but because you guys have been rocking with us for an hour and 37 minutes, I will just mention the UFC doesn't have a main event for Brazil. They're like looking around, like they're talking about Alex Pereira. Can I do UFC 300 and UFC 301? Like probably not practical to try and make that turnaround. What if they can get Pantoja in a big fight with a bigger star than he is, like Brandon Moreno? Could be something to look forward to there. So I think it's a great fight, but I do think there's a reason why, Albazi is replaceable here. right? I think Brandon Moreno's the A side. As John Anik likes to say, the man around whom this card was built. I believe that's Brandon Moreno. So fun fight, great night of fights. I'm excited for this Mexico card. Rich, tell the people where they can find you, besides in that description box down below.
Yeah, same as usual. Twitter, link in the bio for my Patreon bets. If you want my bets, it costs you $3 for them. Got a Discord group as well. We chat a bunch of shit. And yeah, if this tickles your interest, we were leaking some Aylin Perez OnlyFans nudes in the Discord today. So if that's your thing, sign up and you get to take a ganders at them. It's crazy, bro. I know OnlyFans is OnlyFans, but Aylin Perez has gone full retard on it, man. She's literally... There's some explicit pictures on there, man. It's wild. So I'll be fading her in the next fight, man.
The true OnlyFans fade, the research that other people just don't want to do. There you go. There you have it. But in any case, guys, that's a wrap for the show. An hour and 40 minutes of some of the best analysis in this space. I truly feel whether we're right or wrong on any one pick, we're going to try and put you in a position to succeed, whether you tail, fade, or are indifferent. God bless. I hope that you guys have a great betting event. I hope that you guys enjoy all those fights each and every time. If you're looking for more information from me, that's also down in that description box below. I have a Patreon where I do post information, resources, and my bets as well. But there's a lot of people in there that are independent analysts that use my tools, my resources, and my information to benefit their own process. And I think that's the best use of the information overall. So just wanted to say that. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts that you want to get off your chest, go ahead and fire those in the comment section down below. And the best comment on today's stream, whether that's your favorite bet, your write-up, a joke, whatever it is, I'm going to pin that comment as well. So appreciate you guys for the feedback. Sharpest chat in the game. Wouldn't be the same show without you guys. God bless, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care, everybody.